After what happened to me in Portland, I was barely sleeping, barely eating, barely functioning. One night in early October, I was walking home from work at the hospital, a job I once loved but grew to dread, when a man pulled me into an alley near my apartment and beat me with a pipe for my purse. A purse that had maybe $60, some lip balm, and my badge. That was it. I woke up in the ER I used to take calls in, except this time I was the one being wheeled in. I had a broken rib, stitches above my eye, and enough trauma to send my nervous system into overdrive for the rest of the year. The police never caught him. My therapist told me to reset, move somewhere quiet, get a change of scenery. I Googled towns with low crime rates and cheap rent, and a name I'd never heard of came up: Rapid Falls, Montana. It sounded like something out of a postcard, so I packed what I had left into my sedan and drove 12 hours through snow and fog to a place I only knew by name. The job I landed wasn't glamorous, a part-time cashier shift at a 7-Eleven on the edge of town. But it paid enough to keep my rent covered and gave me the peace and structure my therapist insisted I needed. I worked the night shift, which sounds reckless considering what I'd been through, but in Rapid Falls, nothing ever happened. That's what I told myself. That's what they all said. I had a routine. Wake up at 6 p.m., jog 2 miles, helps with the anxiety. Make coffee at 9, inventory at 11, till count at 12:30. And always lock the back freezer room by 9:15, like clockwork. The town was small and quiet, the street still. People here still waved to each other and left their doors unlocked, and I tried to believe that was a good thing. On the night of February 17th, it was brutally cold. I remember watching the snow swirl against the glass doors, thinking it looked like static on an old TV. I hadn't seen a single customer in nearly an hour. It was peaceful, a little eerie, sure, but peaceful. At 11:10, I noticed a beat-up white Chevy pickup parked across 2 spaces in the lot. Engine off, lights off, just sitting there, pointed toward the store. I watched it for a while. I told myself maybe it was a trucker catching some sleep, but something about the way it sat, angled toward the exit with the driver's side hidden in shadow, felt off. I didn't move, didn't stare too long, just made a mental note. At 11:48, while I was restocking gum at the front display, I noticed the motion detector light blink on in aisle 4, then off. I stopped, gum in hand. My heart gave a little jolt. That sensor only went off if someone passed under it. It wasn't on a timer, and there were no rodents or bugs that big, just people. I leaned forward slightly and listened. Nothing. No footsteps. No creaking floor tiles. Just the low hum of the fridges and the occasional gust of wind rattling the front door. Probably faulty again, I muttered, trying to keep my voice even. But my stomach was already twisting. I turned toward the back office to grab my phone. No bars, not surprising in a storm, but not comforting either. The walkie on the wall had low battery. I thought about texting my manager, but he was never awake this late. I decided to check the aisle myself, but I stayed cautious. 1 step at a time. I turned the corner into aisle 4. Empty. Shelves all looked untouched, except one thing, a bag of trail mix lying on the ground, half open. Was that there before? I whispered. I didn't think so. As I crouched to pick it up, something clicked behind me. Not from the front door, from the back, the freezer room. And I knew in that moment something was very wrong. The click echoed louder than it should have. Metal on metal. Definite. Deliberate. My entire body went rigid. I knew that sound. The freezer room had a push-latch door that gave a distinct click when opened. I had locked it. I remember locking it. I always locked it. I straightened up slowly, the bag of trail mix forgotten on the floor. My ears tuned to every inch of silence pressing down on the store. The only sounds were the low hum of the freezers and the soft patter of snow hitting the glass. Could be the latch slipping, I told myself. Humidity or something. Happens with old doors. But I didn't believe that. Not for a second. I stepped backward, careful not to make noise, and reached under the front counter where we kept the store phone, a dusty landline with a coiled cord that always tangled. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. It rang 4 times. 911, what's your emergency? This is Lauren Myers, 4085 Willowbank, 711. I think someone's inside, in the back room. I locked it earlier, but before I could finish, I heard it. Breathing, slow, deep, raspy, coming from the curtain that separated the freezer from the main floor. I turned toward it, paralyzed. A shadow fell just behind the fabric, wide shoulders, still, unmoving. Then a voice, low, male, calm. You missed me earlier. I was here at 9:40. I dropped the phone. I couldn't think, couldn't move. All I knew was that voice. It sounded familiar somehow. Not the exact words, but the tone. Calm, almost casual. As if this wasn't the first time. I backed up fast, nearly stumbling over the mat in front of the counter. I fumbled under the register and hit the panic button. Once, then again. The front lights flickered briefly. Could have been the storm. Or not. I ducked behind the counter and grabbed the only things within reach, a box cutter and a half-full bottle of counter spray. Pathetic weapons, but better than nothing. I crouched down and tried to slow my breathing. Everything went quiet. So quiet that every little buzz and creak felt amplified. I texted my brother, Matt. If anything happens to me, I love you. Store address and location. Weird man inside. Might be my mugger. I don't know why I wrote might be. Deep down, I felt it. The voice, the confidence, that presence behind the curtain. It was the same type of confidence that man had when he attacked me in Portland. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. And exactly how scared I'd be. Minutes passed. 10. Maybe 15. Felt like hours. Still nothing. I considered peeking above the counter, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Every horror story I'd ever read, every missing woman on late-night true crime shows, they all started like this. And then I saw them. Headlights. Red and blue flashing lights flooding the windows. I stood slowly, body still trembling, barely able to hold the box cutter steady. I unlocked the door for the officers before they even got out of their cruisers. 2 deputies stormed inside, guns drawn, moving in practiced formation toward the back. I followed, numb and shaking, as one of them pulled back the curtain. Nothing. The freezer door was cracked open. No one inside. But above, the ceiling vent was wide open. Dust smeared along the edges, and just inside the frame were black smudges, handprints, dirty, oily handprints. They swept the building. No sign of forced entry. No footprints from the back. But in the far corner of the storeroom, tucked between an old mop bucket and a stack of soda crates, was a 7-Eleven employee hat. Old, crumpled, from a different store in Idaho. And a phone. A burner. I broke down outside in the snow, crying into my jacket while one of the officers spoke softly, telling me I was safe now. But safe didn't feel real anymore. Not after that voice. Not after, "You missed me earlier." The following morning, the world outside the store was washed in cold light. Police tape still stretched across the glass doors, flapping in the wind like it had no idea how close it had come to being just a decoration. I hadn't slept. They'd driven me back to my apartment around 3 a.m., but I never even took my jacket off. I just sat on my couch with the TV on mute, watching local commercials flicker across the screen. Something about that felt safer. Meaningless noise. Faces I didn't know. At 8 a.m., my manager called. I let it ring the first 3 times before finally answering. "Lauren?" he said, groggy. "You okay? The cops said there was a break-in?" I didn't even know how to answer. What do you say to that? Break-in wasn't the right word. He hadn't broken anything. He had been there, already there, waiting. "They think someone got in through the vents," I said, voice hollow. "The vents?" He sounded like he didn't believe it. "Yeah." I paused. He said something to me. Said I missed him earlier. There was silence on the other end. Then, "You should take a few days, I'll get someone to cover." I knew I wasn't going back. Not to that store, not ever. I think he knew it too, but we didn't say it out loud. Around noon, the lead officer from the scene, Deputy Holt, came by to take a longer statement. I'd already given one the night before, but now that I'd had a chance to calm down, he wanted details. I offered him coffee. He declined. He sat across from me in my kitchen, flipping through a small notepad. "You? Never came out from behind the curtain?" The man didn't touch. I shook my head. "No, but he was there. He spoke to me." "And you locked the freezer room earlier in the night?" "Yes," I said, with more bite than I intended. "I always lock it." He nodded slowly, "Before your shift even started." There was a vent leading out to the alley. Could be he was already inside. That chilled me. I had checked the store at 10 like I always did. Could I have walked right past him without knowing? Then he told me something that made my stomach sink further. We ran the burner phone. No luck. But the hat, it's from a store in Twin Falls, Idaho. They had a similar report. Woman cashier, late shift. Lights flickered. Door ajar. She quit the next day, wouldn't talk to us. Said she just wanted to forget. I stared at him. "So this guy's been doing this for a while?" "We think so," Holt said. "Do anything." Quietly. No violence, just watching, waiting. Sometimes he doesn't, and other times, I asked. He didn't answer. When he left, I locked all the windows in my apartment and covered the vents in my bedroom. It didn't help. I knew how thin the walls between safety and horror really were now, thin enough for a whisper to slip through. I didn't leave my apartment for days. Groceries were delivered. I turned off all alerts on my phone. Every noise became suspect. A car door slamming outside made me jump. A cough from the hallway had me grabbing the box cutter from my drawer. I even caught myself checking the ceiling of my kitchen at night, convinced I'd hear that click again. It became compulsive. I'd turn off the lights, go to bed, then get up 10 minutes later to scan the ceiling one more time. I tried going to therapy again, remote sessions. But every time I tried to talk about it, my throat closed up. My old therapist from Portland reached out too, Dr. Levine. She was kind and patient, like always, but I could hear the pity in her voice now. That was somehow worse than fear. A week after the incident, Matt, my brother, drove in from Spokane. He didn't say much when he arrived. He just sat on the couch next to me, put on a movie we used to watch as kids, and didn't press me for answers. That was the first time I felt something close to normal since that night. But even with Matt there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. Not from a window, from memory. What got me wasn't just the fear. It was the idea that I wasn't the first. That this man had done this before. That maybe he'd done worse. That there were other women, other stores, other voices whispering, "You missed me earlier." And it wasn't like he'd gotten caught. He'd gotten away, clean, quiet. That stayed with me. One night around 2 a.m. I decided to drive. I didn't care where. I just needed to move, to be somewhere else, to feel like I had control over my body again. I ended up in a gas station 30 miles outside town. The clerk was maybe 19, earbuds in, tapping away at a phone. He didn't look up as I walked the aisles. That used to be me. I bought a pack of gum and a bottle of water. As I handed him the cash, I said, "Lock your freezer door. Make sure you..." He blinked. "Huh?" "Just do it." I drove away without explaining. I think I just needed to say it out loud. That was when I realized this wasn't over. Not for me. Maybe not for the next girl either. Spring came slowly to Rapid Falls. Snow clung stubbornly to sidewalks like a ghost that didn't know it was supposed to leave. By then, I had moved out of my apartment and into a smaller studio above a retired couple's garage on the far edge of town. No vents, no sliding doors, just 4 thick walls, 1 entrance, and enough quiet to hear my own breath when I needed to. I never returned to the 7-Eleven. I left my keys in an envelope at the police station with a short note. I'm done. That was all I had left to say to them. Officer Holt called a week later to let me know there had been no further sightings of the man in the white Chevy. Not in Rapid Falls, not in Twin Falls, not anywhere. I think he's gone, he told me. Maybe he spooked himself. But I knew better. People like him don't spook. They shift. They wait. Every now and then I'd scroll through small-town news headlines. Unexplained break-in at corner store in Idaho. Woman in Utah quits after strange night shift scare. Police investigating strange ventilation access in rural shop. None of them made national news. Too small. Too unconfirmed. But the stories were there. Buried like bones just under the surface. I started writing them down. Not out of obsession, but clarity. It helped to turn the darkness into something I could hold, examine, even name. I gave the man a name, too. Not his real one, just something for the pages. I called him the Aisle Watcher. Fitting, maybe a little dramatic, but somehow true. Then one afternoon, something changed. I was at a laundromat just off Main Street, sitting near the window reading a paperback when a woman across from me asked if I lived nearby. She looked tired, young, maybe early 20s, sunken eyes, the look of someone trying hard to keep it together. Yeah, I said, couple blocks up. You ever work nights? She asked, folding a gray hoodie into a laundry basket. I paused. Why? She looked toward the door, then back at me. I worked the night shift at the mini-mart off exit 9. 2 nights ago, I found the back door open. It's supposed to latch, but it was hanging. My throat tightened. You see anyone? I asked. No, but I swear something was missing off the top shelf, like barely anything, just a bag of trail mix. She laughed nervously. Stupid, right? I closed my book and looked at her. It's not stupid. She tilted her head. You sound like you've dealt with weird stuff before. I have, I said. Then I gave her my name, my number, and told her something no one had ever told me. You're not imagining it, you're not paranoid, be careful. Lock everything. If anything feels wrong, trust that. She nodded. Didn't say anything right away, but her shoulders relaxed just a little. That was the moment I realized something important. I couldn't control what had happened to me. I couldn't undo the night that man crawled down into my life like a shadow from the ceiling. But I could make sure others didn't feel alone when it happened to them. And for me, that was enough. People think trauma is loud, that it explodes and leaves visible wreckage. But the truth is, it's often quiet. It creeps into your routines, into your nights, into your breath. It settles into your silence and changes the shape of your trust. For a long time, I thought survival meant hiding, closing doors, shutting windows, sleeping with a box cutter next to the bed. But now I know real survival is connection. It's remembering you aren't the only one who's afraid, that someone else might be sitting behind a counter, staring into a dark aisle, wondering if the breath they hear isn't theirs. What happened at the 7-Eleven didn't break me. It changed me. And in a strange way, it gave me purpose. Always trust your instincts, even when the world tells you you're imagining things. Fear isn't weakness, it's a signal. Listen to it, honor it, and when you survive something that tried to undo you, speak. Because your voice might be the lifeline someone else needs to hear in the dark. I never thought I'd end up back in Harrow. It's the kind of place you forget on purpose. 1 high school, 2 gas stations, and a handful of memories I'd spent most of my 20s trying to suppress. But when Mom passed away and Dad started forgetting the names of everyday things, what day it was, whether he'd already eaten, I didn't have a choice. He couldn't be left alone, not anymore. So I packed my life into boxes and drove the 9 hours from Sacramento to Pine Valley Road. The old house looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was still chipped in the same places. The mailbox leaned just a little more. The kind of decay you don't notice until you've been gone a long time. Dad, Walter, greeted me like he was just seeing me after a long day at work, not like we hadn't spoken in months. He smiled too brightly and held on a little too long when he hugged me. But that's how it started. A dozen tiny losses, one by one, until the man who taught me how to ride a bike and fix a spark plug was just a passenger in his own mind. On April 14th, we went into town for a doctor's appointment. The usual round of questions, memory tests, and polite nods from the nurse who clearly didn't think he'd improve. By the time we were driving back home, the sun was already dipping below the hills. That's when he said it. "Let's stop here. I want soup." I looked over and saw the flickering neon of the old 7-Eleven up ahead on Buckridge Highway. "They don't sell soup, Dad." "Yes, they do," he snapped, with a fire I hadn't heard in years. "Always got the clam chowder." "Every Wednesday, your mother," I almost corrected him. Mom hated clam chowder, but something in his tone, it felt real, like he believed it down to the bone. Against better judgment, I pulled in. The parking lot was empty. Lights flickered in the store windows, a dull yellow glow that made the place feel older than it should. But I figured if it brought Dad some small joy, even if it was built on broken memory, it was worth the stop. The second we walked in, something felt off. Not like ghosts or cold spots, just wrong. Like the place wasn't expecting us. The hum of the overhead lights sounded too loud. The air smelled like something metallic and warm, like old copper left in the sun. A man stood by the coffee machine fidgeting with a cup, but he didn't look up. Behind the counter was a tall, skinny guy with slicked back hair and a name tag that read Kyle. He gave a lazy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Evening. Cold one out, huh?" I nodded. "Just looking." Dad was already wandering toward the shelves, fingers grazing boxes and cans like they held something personal. I turned to grab a tea from the fridge, but when I looked back, he was gone. "Hey, Kyle," I said, walking up to the counter. "Did you see my dad? Gray coat, white hair?" He tilted his head, went toward the back, probably checking out the soup. "We keep it hot." I raised a brow. "Soup? You're kidding, right?" He just smiled. You'd be surprised what people find comforting. Chapter 2. I walked down the narrow aisle, calling out, "Dad?" No answer, just the distant hum of a fridge and the soft hiss of something cooking. I turned the corner and stopped dead. There was a small folding table. It hadn't been there moments ago. On it sat a silver tray of soup, steaming. Next to it, one paper bowl, already filled. And my father, seated on an upside-down milk crate, spooning the soup into his mouth like a man who'd been waiting years for it. "Dad?" I said, moving toward him. "What are you doing?" He didn't look up. "She used to get this for me, every Wednesday." I froze. "What?" Then I saw it. Floating in the soup, half submerged, were a pair of gold-rimmed reading glasses. Mine. I'd left them in the glove box 10 minutes ago. I hadn't brought them in. "Is this your soup?" Walter asked softly. I thought it was mine. I turned, heart thudding, and found Kyle standing at the edge of the aisle. He hadn't made a sound. "He remembered something," Kyle said. Some remember what matters. That doesn't happen often. Most folks just forget. But what the hell is this? I snapped. "Who are you?" He didn't answer, just looked at my father with something close to pity or reverence. It was hard to tell. "Time's thin here," Kyle said. "Sometimes it folds, like pages in a book. You slipped in." I grabbed my dad's arm. "We're leaving." He resisted. "I have to finish. She's waiting." "No, she's not," I hissed. "She's gone." "Not here," Kyle said. "Not in this memory." I pulled him harder. The lights overhead flickered like a warning. The hum turned into a low, painful buzz. We ran. I shoved through the back exit, alarms wailing behind us. The night outside was darker than before, the parking lot seemingly stretched and unfamiliar. Our truck? Gone. And the glasses? They were in Dad's pocket. still wet. We stood in the dark outside the 7-Eleven, my breath coming out ragged, Walter trembling beside me. The emergency exit had dumped us behind the building, where the light from the highway didn't reach. No cars, no neon, just darkness swallowing the outlines of trees, the soft wail of the alarm already dying in the distance like it didn't belong to this world anymore. And the truck, gone, not stolen, just not there, as if we had never arrived. I checked my pockets. My phone was there, but no signal. Nothing. Not even a flicker of GPS. I pulled Walter close, trying to steady my thoughts. "Come on," I said. "We'll walk." We cut through the shoulder of the road, Walter still clutching his coat like he was cold. Though the air wasn't freezing, he didn't say a word. I half expected him to ask what was going on or to tell me it was all some joke. But he just stared ahead, quiet, like he'd accepted whatever this was. It took us 15 minutes to reach the nearest business with a light on. A diner closed for the night but with a payphone still bolted to the side of the building. I called 911. An officer named Brewer picked us up 20 minutes later. Nice guy, mid-40s, thinning hair, too tired for this kind of nonsense. "You're saying the 7-Eleven was open?" he asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Because as far as I know, it's been closed all week. Power issues, electrical work going on, places locked up." "I'm telling you, we were inside, officer. There were people, a cashier, a guy named Kyle. My father ate soup in there. Says the place is pitch black," Brewer muttered. "Sent me over just in case. But the store was empty." Alarm went off about an hour ago. Dispatch, I didn't argue anymore. I was too tired. The moment you try to explain something that sounds impossible, people stop listening and start writing you off. Walter hadn't spoken since we left, not until 2:13 a.m. I heard him sobbing in his room. When I rushed in, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, shaking like a child, tears soaking into his palms. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "She's still in there," he whispered. "She made me soup every Wednesday." The next day, I visited the 7-Eleven in daylight. I told myself I wanted answers. Maybe I needed to prove it wasn't some shared hallucination or a bad dream. Maybe I just needed the world to feel solid again. The store sat dull and silent under a gray morning sky. Yellow tape fluttered on the glass doors. Inside, shelves had been cleared off. Wiring dangled from the ceiling. Dust clung to every surface like the place hadn't been touched in weeks. There was no table in the back, no folding chair, no milk crate, just an empty floor and a faint smell of old fryer grease. No sign of Kyle, no security footage. Police told me all the cameras had been unplugged. One of the techs said the power had been off for 10 days straight. I stood there staring at nothing, long enough for a construction worker to tell me I wasn't allowed inside. I left. Later that afternoon, I opened the glove compartment of the truck. My glasses were still there, dry, untouched. But the pair Walter had pulled from his coat, the ones wet with soup, they were gone. That night, I asked Walter to tell me everything he remembered. He got quiet again. Then he said, "I used to go there before you were born. That 7-Eleven, on Wednesdays. I'd pick up soup for her, for your mom. She always liked the corn chowder." I didn't know what to say. He looked so certain. "You believe me, right?" he asked. "I don't know what I believe," I said. And I meant it. The nights after that weren't easy. Every creak in the house had me sitting up in bed. I started sleeping with the hallway light on like I used to after nightmares as a kid. And Walter? Well, he got worse. He started mumbling in his sleep. "She's still there. Soup's getting cold. Wednesday's almost here." At first I thought it was nonsense. Then I looked at the calendar. April 21st was a Wednesday. That day, I kept him busy. Took him out for lunch, played his favorite records, made sure he didn't nap too much. But as evening rolled around, I saw it in his eyes, this quiet pull, like something calling him back. I stayed up late keeping watch, sitting outside his door with a book in hand. And then, just past midnight, I must have dozed off. When I woke, the house was silent. His room was empty. The front door, unlocked. I jumped in the truck and drove straight to Buckridge Highway, tires kicking up gravel. The 7-Eleven was dark. Dead. I pulled around to the back. Nothing. No sign of anyone. But on the back steps were my glasses. Not the ones in my truck. The ones I wore that day. The ones I hadn't seen since. They were still wet. Sometimes, memories don't just live in our heads. They live in places, in objects, in the fabric of a moment. They can survive us, shape us, and if we're not careful, consume us. I don't know what happened at that 7-Eleven. I don't know who or what Kyle was. But I've stopped trying to make sense of it. Some memories don't fade. Some doors, once opened, never quite shut. I didn't want to go out that night. Not because I had plans or anything better to do, I just didn't have the energy to pretend I was fine. My knee was still swollen from standing 8 hours at the register. I was limping worse than usual, and every time I sat down for more than 5 minutes, I could feel the ache set deep in the bone. My friends, if you can call them that, had been bugging me all shift to go out afterward. Just pancakes, Kara had said. Comfort carbs. It'll make everything better. Late night diner run, greasy booth, bad coffee, and a stack of I almost said no. But Jess was driving and already halfway to guilt-tripping me, and honestly, sitting alone at home nursing my knee didn't sound like a better option. We clocked out just after 2 a.m., tired, restless, and still in our work clothes. Jess's car smelled like fries and stale perfume, but I didn't complain. On the way to the diner, she suggested we stop at 7-Eleven, Gatorade or something, the place on Larkspur. Just for drinks, she said. I knew the one. It sat across from an old auto shop, surrounded by mostly empty businesses, the kind of place that always looked open but rarely had customers. The lot was dim and mostly vacant except for a silver Nissan parked diagonally across 2 spaces. Something about the way it was parked bugged me. We pulled in. The store lights were harsh and overbright, buzzing with that annoying hum cheap fluorescents make. I stayed in the car for a second longer than the others, breathing through the sharp sting in my knee. Then I followed them in, slow and dragging my weight to the right. Inside, it was way too quiet. No music, no chatter, just the 3 of us, and them. 2 guys, standing in aisle 5, backs mostly turned, hoodies up despite the heat. One of them had his hand jammed deep into his pocket, face half hidden. The other kept glancing sideways at us like he wasn't reading labels so much as watching. I felt it instantly, that quiet warning your body gives you before your mind can make sense of it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then he spoke. You limping? I froze. He was right next to me. I hadn't even seen him move from the aisle to the fridge. What? I said. Your leg. You okay? His voice was flat, not concerned, more curious, like he was cataloging information. I'm fine, I said, backing up a step. No need to be rude, he muttered. Something in his tone, cold and toneless, made my skin crawl. I turned, found Jess near the gum rack. I gripped her arm. We're leaving. What happened? I said we're leaving. I didn't wait. I limped straight out the door, heart pounding harder with each step. Behind us, I heard the door chime again. Get to the car, I said, louder now, urgency overriding the pain. Now. They saw my face and they didn't ask questions. Kara practically ran past me. Jess fumbled for the keys as we all slid into the Hyundai, the engine still warm from the drive. I looked back. The guy, hoodie still on, face still shadowed, was following. But not running, just walking, fast, measured, controlled, like he knew he didn't need to rush. He's coming, I whispered, as Jess cranked the engine. Go. Now. The car jolted backward. I winced as my knee banged against the glove box. Jess pulled onto Larkspur in one sharp motion, tires skidding slightly against the gravel edge of the lot. No one spoke. In the side mirror, I saw him pause near the Nissan. He didn't get in. He just stood there and watched. No chase, no weapon. Just a lingering stare that pierced more than any words could have. Jess drove for 10 minutes before anyone said anything. "What the hell was that?" Kara finally asked, her voice tight and high. "I don't know," I said. "But he was watching us the whole time. They weren't shopping." "What if they followed us from work?" Jess said. "I didn't see anyone behind us on the way here, but..." We went quiet again. The plan for pancakes was officially dead. Back at my apartment, I iced my knee and tried to replay it all in my head. The way they were standing. How quiet it was inside. How no one else came in the store the whole time we were there. Every time I thought about his voice, flat, like it wasn't human, I got that tight feeling in my chest again. I barely slept. Every little sound made me sit up, eyes darting toward the door. I pulled a chair in front of it, just in case. By morning, I decided to call corporate. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe to confirm something normal, like the cashier was new or they'd had security issues before. Anything to make it feel less surreal. The woman on the line was polite, helpful, until I mentioned the store. "The one on Larkspur," I said, "across from the auto shop." She paused. I heard her keyboard stop clacking. "There's a store on Larkspur?" she asked. "Yeah, we were there last night, around 2:30 a.m. Her voice dropped. "That store's been closed for renovation since April." I sat upright. No, it was open, lights were on, freezers running. We were inside. Another pause. Then she said carefully, "That's not possible. The power was shut off last month." I told the girls the next day. Neither one believed me at first. "It had lights," Kara argued. "How would it be open without power?" "I don't know," I said, mentioned the location. But the woman was serious. She sounded confused when I even... "Maybe someone's squatting in there," Jess said, "or using it for something else." We tried to rationalize it, but nothing stuck. I checked the location again online. No hours listed. No photos newer than March. The weirdest part? When we drove by again the next weekend, it was boarded up. Windows covered in plywood. Chains on the doors. The Nissan was gone. There wasn't even a trash can out front. I haven't gone back since. Neither have they. But sometimes when I'm out late, grocery shopping after work or getting gas, I feel it again. That quiet, crawling sensation. Like eyes tracking me from somewhere just beyond my periphery. Like I'm being watched not by someone, but by the moment itself. Weeks later, my knee healed enough that I stopped limping. But I still think about that night. How fast everything shifted. How quickly something could go wrong. How subtle a threat could be. I never saw his face. I never saw a weapon. But somehow that was what made it worse. He didn't have to chase us. He just had to be too close. That's the part that sticks with me. How quiet it was. How calculated. Like we walked into something that wasn't meant for us. Was it a setup? Were we bait? I'll never know. I haven't been to a 7-Eleven since. Not all danger is loud or obvious. Sometimes the real threats are the quiet ones. The ones standing just a little too close. Watching just a little too long. Trust your instincts, they're rarely wrong. And never ignore the moment your body says, something's off. I was 19 the summer everything got weird. The kind of summer that felt heavy even when nothing was happening. My mom had just lost her job, and between my second year of college and the tuition that came with it, I had two choices. Drop out or pick up a job no one else wanted. That's how I ended up working nights at the 7-Eleven off Oak Ridge Loop in Wellington Ridge, Ohio. It was the kind of place people forgot existed. It sat just a few minutes from a dead mall and got barely any traffic after sundown. Sometimes I'd go hours without a single customer. It wasn't exactly dangerous, just quiet, but the wrong kind of quiet. Like everything was holding its breath. Megan and Jamal worked the same shift with me most nights. They were both locals, older, quiet, with this unspoken understanding about the place. I tried to make small talk early on, just to cut the silence, but they never opened up much. At first, I figured it was just the night shift vibe, but then I noticed how both of them completely avoided the back of the store after 9 p.m. There was no real back room at this 7-Eleven, just a section past the shelves, closed off by a plastic curtain. You'd have to push past it like you were walking into a busted car wash. Behind it was a single swinging bulb and a bunch of metal racks filled with junk. Expired candy, boxes of off-brand bleach, faded signage from the early 80s. The space always felt cold, even in July, but I figured it was the lack of insulation. One night during my second week, the manager called in and asked us to prep for a bleach restock. Megan was restocking gum when she said, real quick and quiet, "Just grab it fast, okay? Don't mess around back there." She didn't look at me when she said it, just kept her eyes down and her voice flat. I laughed like she was joking, but she didn't laugh back. When I pushed past the curtain, I immediately noticed how cold it was. Freezing, like standing in a walk-in freezer. I rubbed my arms, grabbed the first bottle I saw, and turned to leave. That's when I saw him. There was a man slumped in the far corner, facing away. He had on a pale blue hoodie, the kind you'd throw on to walk your dog or run to the gas station. His head was down. I couldn't see his face, but every inch of me knew he didn't belong there. I screamed. By the time Megan and Jamal came running, he was gone. They didn't look surprised. "You saw him, didn't you?" Jamal asked, almost whispering. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That night, after the store closed, Megan and Jamal told me the story, or at least the version of it they'd heard. The building used to be a diner back in the late 80s, before it burned down and was rebuilt as the convenience store it is now. There was a man who worked nights. Derek was his name. He was stabbed during a robbery, supposedly while hiding in that same back room. The story was passed down from older employees. Nobody ever found a news article or police report about it. The company never acknowledged it. The new build erased the past. "Every night shift person sees him eventually," Megan said. Jamal nodded. "He shows up when it gets cold back there." I wanted to write it off, say it was a joke or some weird form of hazing, but I'd seen that figure. I felt that cold. It was real. At least real enough that it stuck in my head long after the conversation ended. The next few nights I did my job, avoided the back room, and tried to push the image of the man in the hoodie out of my mind. But that's when the sightings started again. Subtle things. Once I saw someone sitting at the end of aisle 6, just sitting there. When I turned to look again, the aisle was empty. Another time I spotted a blurry reflection in the freezer door, like someone was standing just behind me. No one was there. It wasn't just tricks of the light. It was like someone was watching me, waiting for me to turn around. Megan noticed me flinching at shadows and said, "Pretending you don't notice. You don't get used to it. You just get better at." I decided to bring a disposable camera. If I was going crazy, I needed to prove it, to myself at least. One night, just after 10, the cold hit me again when I walked past the curtain. Same spot, same corner. I raised the camera, clicked once, and walked out without looking back. When I got the photos developed, one of them made my knees go weak. In the corner of the frame was a blurry shape, pale and crouched, almost see-through. But it was there, in the exact spot I'd seen him that first night. I brought the photo to work. Megan didn't say anything. She just folded it up and stuck it into her pocket. Jamal didn't even want to look at it. "You shouldn't have taken that," he said. "It makes it worse." After that photo, everything changed. The store didn't feel like a place I worked anymore. It felt like something I was trapped in. The nights were longer, the silence was thicker, and the cold? It came more often now, not just in the back room, but near the coffee station, the freezer aisle, even behind the register. I started to dread going in, but I couldn't afford to quit. I kept thinking about the rent due at the end of the month, about my mom sleeping in the next room of our small apartment. She had enough on her plate. I couldn't be the kid who bailed on her job because of a ghost story. Then the lights began acting up. At first, it was just the flicker in aisle 6, but then the feed from the security monitors would freeze up, go to static, or cut out completely. Once they went black just as I saw someone standing on the far side of the store behind the racks of lottery tickets. By the time I looked up from the screen, no one was there. I told the manager about the lights and the monitors. He brushed it off, said, half laughing, "Building's got character." "It's just old wiring, Osrauri character. That's one word for it." Megan kept urging me to switch shifts. Family. They won't ask questions. "Ask for mornings," she said. "Say it's for school, but I couldn't. Morning shifts didn't pay the same, and nobody ever left the shift unless they flat out quit, which started to make more sense to me. One night in late July, I was closing alone. Jamal had called out sick. Megan had switched off for the week. I didn't think much of it when I unlocked the front at 10:33 p.m., walked in, and started prepping for the overnight. I'd done it before, but by 11:53, the air had shifted. I can't explain it any better than that. Something in my chest tightened like my body knew before my mind did. The cooler buzzed louder than usual. The lights overhead dimmed, then flared. All the monitors behind the register went black. I couldn't hear anything but the hum of electricity and the soft thump of my heart. I stepped outside, just for air, just to catch my breath. When I turned back, he was inside. He wasn't crouched, he was standing, just past the counter. Pale blue hoodie dripping, like he'd come in from a storm, even though the night was dry and clear. He wasn't moving, just standing there, head down, face hidden. I froze. I didn't go back inside. I didn't lock the doors behind me. I didn't even remember to grab my keys. I stood under the buzz of the parking lot lights and dialed 911 with shaking hands. 15 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. They searched the store top to bottom, found nothing. Doors were still locked, no signs of forced entry. The place was empty, except for the bleach bottle I'd restocked earlier, now sitting neatly on the counter like someone had left it there for me to find. I quit the next day, walked in at noon and told the manager I was done. No 2 weeks, no questions. He didn't seem surprised, barely looked up from his paperwork. "You sure? You'll lose your hours," he said. "I'm sure," I replied. He didn't argue. I don't think he ever expected me to last that long. I went home and didn't leave my room for 2 days. I kept the photo in my drawer, buried beneath a pile of old school notes. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, but I didn't want to see it again either. I didn't tell my mom the real reason I quit, just said the hours weren't working with school. She didn't press me. 2 months later, the store shut down. They said it was for structural repairs. Something about pipes and floor damage, but nothing ever reopened there. Last I checked, it was still boarded up, windows dust-covered and walls tagged with fading graffiti. I tried to forget about it, but sometimes, even now, I dream about that night. Not the store, not the flickering lights or the back room, but the cold, that unbearable cold, and him. He's sitting in the same corner, same hoodie, same silence. But this time he looks up. I never see his full face, just enough to know he was young, just a kid, probably not much older than me at the time. In the dream, he says one thing: "You're not supposed to remember me." And I always wake up sweating. I've searched local archives, looked up every robbery in the Wellington Ridge area from 1989 through the late 90s. Nothing matched. No fire, no death, no Derek. It's like he never existed. But I know what I saw. I know what followed me out of that room. Whatever happened to him, if it happened, was erased. Maybe covered up. Maybe forgotten. Maybe no one cared enough to remember a kid stabbed in a back room for a till full of bills and quarters. But something in that place wanted to be known, wanted someone to care. I never went back to Oak Ridge Loop. Even now, I take the long way around town just to avoid driving past that stretch of road. I don't know if it's fear or just a heaviness that sits on my shoulders whenever I think about it. A part of me still feels tethered to that place, like something unfinished was left behind. I never told anyone the whole story until years later. You say something like that out loud, and people look at you different, like you're broken, or lying, or both. But the longer I stayed quiet, the more it built up in me, like a pressure valve ticking louder each year. So I started writing it down. Just the truth. No embellishments, no drama. Just what happened, as I lived it. Because no one else seems to remember Derek. No one else was looking for him. And if I don't say his name, who will? There's still no official record. No obituary. No missing persons file. I don't know if the story Megan and Jamal told me was exactly true, or if it had changed through word of mouth over the years. Maybe Derek wasn't stabbed. Maybe there was no fire. Maybe he just disappeared one night on the job and corporate scrubbed it clean to keep the brand alive. But the feeling of that place, the cold, the flickering lights, the silence that seemed too loud to be natural, it was all real. The fear was real. That moment when I saw him standing inside, soaked and still, was the most real thing I've ever felt. Sometimes I think about him more than I should. Not as a ghost, but as a person. A kid with a job he probably didn't want, trying to make rent just like I was. Maybe he was working towards something. Maybe he had people waiting for him. Maybe nobody ever came looking when he didn't come home. That thought stays with me. We move through the world assuming everything gets remembered, that everyone gets a headline or a eulogy or a funeral. But most of us fade, and some people, like Derek, don't just disappear. They're erased. It's strange, the things that linger. I still have the photo. It's yellowed now, curled at the edges, and the figure is even harder to see than it was before. But I know he's there. I don't dream about the store anymore. I haven't in years. But when I walk alone at night, sometimes I feel that old familiar chill crawl down my spine. And I hear his voice again, soft and tired. You're not supposed to remember me. But I do. And I will. Some stories go untold. Not because they aren't true, but because no one bothers to remember them. We live in a world that moves fast and forgets faster, where the overlooked and the unseen disappear without a trace. But memory is a kind of justice, and remembering, even quietly, is a form of care. Don't ignore what others try to erase. The shadows we pretend not to see often carry the truths that matter most. Sometimes, the only thing keeping someone from being forgotten is one person willing to say, "I remember you." I never expected to be alone working the graveyard shift at that sleepy 7-Eleven on Dahlia Street in Tannersville. Yet there I was, 19 months after quitting college and more than a few disappointing moments with my dad's expectations. I'd flunked classes, moved out of jobs, and lied about rent payments. When the opener called in sick and the manager begged me to cover the late shift until 2 a.m., I went. No swagger, just desperation. I needed to prove I could handle responsibility. On September 9th, 2021, at exactly 11:13 p.m., I clocked in. The place was dimly lit, nearly empty. One soda cooler humming, the coffee station blinking in neon. I started unloading a delivery, half listening to the hum of the store lights, planning out my night. Then a man walked in. No bag, no phone, no wallet. Just a heavy gray hoodie pulled tight over his head and a cough like he had a chest full of gravel. He didn't buy anything. He didn't even glance at the snacks. Instead, he paced the aisles, eyes quickly scanning, never stopping. The silence between each turn made my heart feel louder. I stepped from behind the counter, offering the standard greeting. "Can I help you find something?" The man stopped. He looked at me directly with a steady gaze, too steady. "The back yet?" he asked. "You cleaned up?" My pulse jumped. "The back? Why would a customer care about my mop closet or storage hall?" His voice was calm, almost bored, but those words sank into me like ice. I nodded, unsure how to answer. Then he turned and left without buying anything, disappearing into the night. My skin crawled. I locked the front door from inside, per store policy. Solo night shifts required it if you felt uneasy. But locking that door felt more like building a prison than keeping out a threat. I walked to the rear of the store, heart hammering. I passed the cooler, glancing at its frosted glass panels where reflected neon shapes danced. I tried to steady my breath as I approached the mop closet and storage door. The air felt thicker, and I heard a faint scratching coming from behind the locked door. My chest slammed with adrenaline. I slowly opened it. Margin enough to peek inside. Empty. No mop, no rat, no sign of disturbance. But the scratching stopped the moment I looked. I blinked. My limbs shook, but I forced myself to keep going. I backed away from the mop room and turned toward the emergency exit at the back of the store. That's when I saw it. A smear of fresh blood, glistening faintly under the fluorescent lamp, tracked across the push bar. Not bright red, but darker. Persistent. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I was stuck, pulled between terror and logic. I raced back to the register and grabbed the landline to dial my manager, but the line was dead. No dial tone. I tried my cell. No service. I gripped the receiver as if it could short-circuit my fear. Then the front door. I tested it. It wouldn't open. Jammed. The lock wouldn't turn. I jerked on it again. Nothing. Panic pressed in like weights. And then came the knock from inside the cooler. I whipped around. There it was, the glass beer cooler, frosted over, nearly opaque. Someone had exhaled on the inside, fogging the glass. At the center of one panel, a finger traced a single, slow circle in the condensation. One deliberate gesture into my world. Time blurred. I backed up, shaking, grabbed the spare key from under the register. I tried the front door again. Still stuck. Jammed. Maybe sabotaged. I realized then that locking it earlier might have been a mistake. Footsteps echoed behind me in the aisle. I spun. Empty. Every instinct screamed at me to flee. Uneven breathing rattled through my chest. I thought about the chains on the delivery door behind the store. Lucky that they were old and relatively easy to yank. I turned and sprinted toward them, but stopped when I noticed something different hanging nearby. A heavy gray hoodie, just like the man's hoodie, draped on the coat hook near the exit, and on the chest was a name tag. 7-Eleven badge in the same font I'd seen the manager use. It said, Noah, my name. Though I'd never been issued that name tag. That's when the footsteps started again, echoing behind me. Closer this time. My heart felt like a jackhammer. I pulled the chain. The door swung open. I ran through, barefoot, had left my shoes back in the supply closet somewhere. I stumbled across the empty lot, adrenaline and fear pushing me onward. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. No forced entry, no footprints in the dust. Store looked deserted except for that faint smear of dark red on the exit bar and the cooler door condensation. They found a burner phone inside the cooler on the floor. It had stopped recording exactly when I ran. On it, a masked man breathing heavily, pacing inside that cooler, hitting record. His figure flicks into frame, his face never fully shown, watching me. That phone's footprint in my mind stays with me. The officer said no one had entered from outside. The door had no signs of tampering, like the threat came from inside the store. My father later told me I overreacted. Probably just a prank, he said. You blow things out of proportion. But what I felt wasn't joking. It was deliberate, malicious, and personal. I was never offered another night shift, ever. After the police left, I sat in my car for nearly an hour with the engine off, just gripping the steering wheel. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every sound outside, a branch moving, a distant car, made me flinch. When I finally started the ignition, I didn't go home right away. I just drove. Circles mostly. Around town, through neighborhoods I didn't know, windows down to remind myself I was alive. When I did get home, I didn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling until the sun came up, wondering what would have happened if I hadn't gotten out, if that lock had held me a little longer. The next day, my manager called. She sounded annoyed, not worried. "You locked the door?" she asked, like I'd broken some ancient code. I followed policy. I felt threatened. She huffed, pulled the feed. "There's no footage of the guy coming in, you know. The cameras are fine. I didn't know what to say. I knew he came in. I talked to him. I watched him walk out, but they said there was no footage from that part of the shift. Just a static freeze for exactly 12 minutes, like someone cut the feed on purpose." "I'm not making this up," I said quietly. "You left your shoes," she replied. "You know how weird that looks?" Click. That was it. No concern, no follow-up. Just me, feeling like a crazy person who left his shoes in the middle of a hallucination. I didn't even bother to go pick them up. They could keep them. Whatever had walked through that door, whatever left that hoodie and that message, could keep the shoes too. The following week, I got texts from coworkers asking if I was okay. None of them wanted to cover the night shifts. One girl, Alex, said, "You saw him, didn't you?" When I pressed her, she clammed up. I drove back to the store once, just parked across the street. It was broad daylight, middle of lunch hour. Everything looked normal, but the feeling was still there, sitting in my gut like a rock. That place wasn't right. Not for me. Maybe not for anyone. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who would go through the effort of watching someone like that? Quietly, through a cooler door, recording the entire thing, then disappearing without a trace. There was nothing stolen, nothing vandalized, no threats made. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. The problem is, I still didn't know what it meant. A few months went by and I convinced myself to move on. I picked up a job at an auto shop working daylight. No isolation, no quiet humming lights or back rooms. I kept my head down, worked hard, even called my dad one afternoon just to say hi. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was surprised. I told myself what happened was some freak thing, a fluke, a one-off, until I started seeing the gray hoodie. Not in person, at first. It started with dreams. I'd be walking past a row of coolers and out of the corner of my eye I'd see him, standing still, not moving, always with his head down, just the top of the hoodie visible. I'd try to wake up and couldn't. I'd try to scream and hear nothing. One night after a shift at the shop, I stopped at a gas station for snacks. It was close to midnight, but the place was busy, so I didn't think twice. I went in, picked up a drink, and glanced toward the beer cooler. There was fog on the glass, just a little, like someone had breathed on it. I didn't even look for a circle. I walked out without paying and didn't stop until I was back in my car with the doors locked and engine running. The dreams got worse after that, more specific. I'd find myself back at 7-Eleven, barefoot again, the back room colder than ever. I'd run, turn a corner, and instead of shelves or doors, it would just be walls closing in, tighter and tighter, until I'd wake up choking. I tried therapy, told the story to a counselor who nodded and said things like trauma retention and perceptual stress responses. She meant well, but it didn't help. I knew what I saw. I knew how it felt. You can't fake that kind of fear. Sometimes I wondered if that guy, whoever he was, picked people, like he waited for the right kind of person to be alone, uncertain, someone trying to prove something to themselves, someone who wouldn't be believed. Maybe that's why he said what he did. "You cleaned up the back yet?" Like he was checking off a list. It was almost a year later when I heard about the fire. Someone from the old 7-Eleven messaged me out of the blue. Burned down. Overnight. No one hurt. Weird, right? "Hey, did you hear? Dahlia store, I found an article on a local blog. Electrical issue," they said. Small fire started near the back storage hall. The fire department claimed it was likely faulty wiring near the mop closet. Nobody was working the night shift. Nobody had been assigned to that slot in over 6 months. I don't know what made me do it, but I drove there the next night. The building was sealed off. Caution tape flapped in the wind. The windows were blackened from smoke, and the air still held that sharp, chemical edge of something scorched. But the glass cooler doors, they hadn't shattered. They were intact, and one of them had condensation somehow. It was late, too cold for that, and still, there it was, fogged over, a single circle traced in the glass. I stood across the parking lot, locked in place. I didn't want to get closer. I didn't want to see what else might be waiting for me if I did. But I also knew I wasn't the same kid who locked that door a year ago. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. Not to my dad, not to myself. So I walked. Up to the glass. I waited. Nothing happened. No movement. No face behind the fog. Just me and the quiet hum of the street lamp overhead. Then I noticed something odd on the sidewalk. A scrap of paper scorched around the edges. I picked it up. It was part of a schedule sheet. Old. Faded. Dated September 9th, 2021. My name was highlighted, handwritten in red pen. I didn't take it with me. I left it there, next to the door, and walked back to my car. On the drive home, I kept thinking about the burner phone, the man in the mask, the hoodie on the wall with my name. I thought about the knock, the fog, the voice. "You cleaned up the back yet?" It wasn't a question. It was a ritual, a pattern that played out until someone noticed, until someone broke it. And maybe that fire was the pattern ending. Or maybe it was just the beginning of another version of it, in a new town, with a new kid who thinks he's just working a normal night shift. Alone. I don't know what I believe anymore. But I do know this. I've passed that old building 3 more times since then, and every time there's fog on the glass cooler door. Even though the power's been shut off, I still don't work nights. I still keep my doors unlocked now whenever I'm alone, just in case. Some doors aren't meant to be locked. Not because they keep something dangerous out, but because they trap it inside. Responsibility is important, but no job, no paycheck, and no attempt to earn someone's approval is worth ignoring your instincts. Sometimes, proving yourself means walking away, not staying to endure what should have never been yours to carry in the first place. If your gut tells you something is wrong, trust it. Because once you're inside, some doors don't open again. My day began in chaos. As a substitute teacher, I can handle chaos, but not 3 vomiting kids on a field trip, a phone battery on 5%, and no lunch since the crack of dawn. By 4:10 p.m., I just wanted taquitos and a soda in peace. That 7-Eleven on 91st Hollins Drive in Temple Hills looked empty enough. I told myself 10 minutes tops. Grab food, go home, collapse. I stepped inside and immediately sensed something off. 3 teenage boys huddled near the fountain drink station, whispering and sneering. One looked me over with a smirk, jabbing his elbow into a friend's ribs. I kept walking, adjusting my bag strap and focusing on the microwave. As I waited, my phone buzzed in my hand. Airdrop request, toocute.jpg from unknown. I dropped my jaw, reflexively declined. A second later, airdrop request, bend down 1.move from unknown. I glanced at my reflection in the convex security mirror above. I had bent down to fix my sock. My dress had crept up just a little. My heart sank. How could someone have captured that? I turned, glimpsed the teens again. They pretended to talk sports, but when our eyes met, one of them chuckled. I felt hot in my cheeks. I clenched my phone, moved toward the register, arms tight at my sides. The cashier, a worn woman around 40, rang up my items without looking up. Hesitantly, I asked quietly, "Are there cameras near the microwave? Mirrors? Hidden ones?" She gave a short sigh. "Honey, this is public. This whole place sees everything." She didn't offer comfort, just a plastic bag I declined. I left without giving thanks. Outside, I spotted a black Toyota Corolla parked across the street. Its engine was silent. 2 figures inside, one behind the wheel, one in back, filming something on their phone. My breath went shallow. I backed behind an ice machine near the wall and fired up my phone. 3% battery, no service. I watched. The guy filming turned the screen and seemed to scan something. He didn't look in my direction, but it didn't matter. He was probably the one who airdropped the file. He disappeared as suddenly as he'd appeared. No sign of him or the other passenger. Fear clutched me in waves. I hurried to my car, unlocked the door, and slid inside. Heart hammering. Then I froze. On my back windshield, someone had stuck a note. "You should smile more. Beautiful when mad." I peeled it off carefully, every breath loud in my chest. Tears started as I realized what had happened. Someone in that store, or maybe parked nearby, filmed me without my consent. They targeted me. They made me visible when I wanted to be invisible. I drove straight to the nearest Target with a Wi-Fi hotspot and cried in the parking lot. Even the bright fluorescent lights inside couldn't chase out the humiliation. That night, I scoured every corner of the internet. Reddit, TikTok, YouTube, anywhere creep cam compilation might show up. Hours passed. My phone buzzed occasionally with other files, harassing texts, screenshots of public posts, but nothing matched what I knew had been taken. My sense of paranoia twisted upward. 3 weeks later, my younger cousin messaged a link labeled "Funny School Kids' Faces, Ick, MP4. My glance turned skeptical when I saw clip thumbnails blurred to anonymity, but still recognizable. I clicked while my stomach sank. Clip number 4, there I was, bending to adjust my sock in that store microwave line, lips tight, hair sweeping past my face. The angle, the pacing, everything screamed invasion. No face visible, but that outfit, that posture, I knew it was me. The comments? A cesspool. Score, shotgunning, nice skirt, people objectifying me even though I wasn't invited to be seen. Even anonymous users felt entitled to my image. I deleted everything. TikTok, Insta, Snapchat, all of it vanished within minutes. My chest hurt, but so did everything else. My dignity, my trust. I moved apartments a month later, quit the substitute teaching job. I was out before paranoia could pick apart my new life. I've never returned to that 7-Eleven. I avoid that corner of town. Some nights I dream of the wide fluorescent lights, the teens whispering, the cold look of my reflection in that security mirror. I dream the camera zooms in on me, uninvited. Therapy helped me rebuild trust in myself, but the scars linger. I learned boundaries, not just physical ones, but digital ones. I realized that privacy isn't a given. It has to be reclaimed aggressively. Filming someone without permission isn't just rude, it's violence. A fellow survivor told me about reclaiming her image online, writing my own post, sanitizing search results, sharing my truth. But I couldn't. I'd been silent too long to try shouting into the void. Instead, I found anonymity in rewriting my script. New apartment, new routines, no public-facing social media, just me and a fresh journal. Still, when I pass closed gas stations late at night, I glance at cooler door glass out of habit, looking for fog, shapes, prying eyes. I flinch if a tinted window catches movement. I've learned vigilance, but I've also learned I deserve to not feel watched. Nearly 2 years later, I sat at my anniversary dinner with my best friend. She looked at me and said softly, "You look so much more at peace now." And I believed her. We toasted. I reflected on the strangest, darkest afternoon of my life, how blurred frames and malicious strangers could fracture me. And yet I survived. I still walk the world upright. I still exist beyond a blurred clip on the internet. I drive now with clear car windows and tinted rear glass. I take walks in daylight. I smile when I'm mad because anger is valid. I smile for nobody but me, because I learned something. A person's image isn't yours to take. A person's dignity isn't optional for strangers. Your body and your image belong to you, not to voyeurs, not to strangers, not even to the casual passerby who thinks, It's just a photo. Consent matters. Privacy matters. Don't let the world convince you otherwise. If someone tries to take your image without permission, you have every right to vanish, to rebuild, and to demand respect, even from yourself first. They don't tell you how easy it is to mistake familiarity for love, or how quickly the warm parts of someone can get replaced by cold shadows. I met David at a mutual friend's barbecue in March, the kind where everyone's drinking light beer out of red Solo cups and pretending they know how to grill. He was the guy everyone listened to. Tall, tan, a smile that seemed to shine right through his Ray-Bans. When he talked to me, it felt like I was the only girl in the world. I was fresh off a breakup. He was freshly bored. Maybe that's why we clung to each other so fast. At first, it was movie nights, Target runs, him cooking pasta while I danced in his kitchen. He said I was low maintenance, which he meant as a compliment. We laughed a lot, slept in late, told each other secrets at 2 a.m. while watching reruns of The Office. By month 3, I was spending more time at his place than mine. By month 5, we were sharing rent. And by month 8, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't really looking at me anymore. Not in the way he used to. The night it happened, we were supposed to just grab snacks and chill. It had been a long week at work. I was tired. He was quiet, more than usual, scrolling through his phone in the passenger seat as I drove. Every now and then, the screen lit up his face. He didn't say much. I tried to keep it light. "You want hot Cheetos or those sweet chili Doritos?" I asked as we pulled into the 7-Eleven lot. It was one of those rundown ones on Franklin and 3rd, the kind that always smelled faintly like burned coffee and stale gum. No answer. Inside, the place was mostly empty. Just a cashier behind the counter and an old man buying lottery tickets. I headed straight to the chips aisle. I figured David would be behind me, but when I turned around, he wasn't. I found him near the drinks, with her. I knew who she was before I even fully saw her. The girl from his building. The one with the gym selfies. The one who kept reacting to his Instagram stories at 1 a.m. 2 weeks ago, I had asked him about her. "She's just a neighbor," he said. "You seriously think I'd cheat?" God, relax. But tonight, there she was, standing too close, flipping her hair, her voice a little too sweet. And David, smiling. That fake sideways grin he only used when he was trying to charm. He saw me looking and stepped back. She walked off with a smug look that made my skin crawl. When I walked up to him, my hands were shaking. "Why was she here?" I asked, voice already breaking. He scoffed. "You serious right now?" She said hi. "I saw the messages, David. You lied to me." "You're acting crazy," he said too loud. I hated when he said that. It made the whole thing feel fake, like my feelings were a costume I put on to ruin his night. And then everyone was watching. The cashier, the guy near the Red Bull fridge, even the security mirror above, which showed a girl who looked like she was about to cry. That girl was me. We left in silence. I pushed through the glass doors, the sound of them wheezing shut behind me. Outside, the air had that thick Fresno heat, but under it, a sharp, cold breeze blew through like fall was creeping in early. David followed a minute later, his sneakers squeaking on the dirty tiles as he slammed the car door behind him. We sat there. Neither of us turned on the engine. "Are you done?" he asked, staring straight ahead. "Done with what?" "This drama." I blinked. My voice barely came out. "You embarrassed me." He rolled his head back. "Now?" "Jesus, Lily," she said hi. "You want me to run from every woman I know?" "No," I said quietly. "I want you to respect me." He laughed once, bitter and sharp. "God, you're exhausting." That word, exhausting, landed like a slap. Not because it was loud, but because it had weight, like he'd been carrying it for weeks, waiting for the right time to throw it at me. I didn't say another word on the drive home. He blasted Travis Scott on the speakers, drumming the wheel like nothing had happened. I just stared out the window, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. We got home. I went straight to the bathroom, closed the door, and cried into a hand towel. Not because of the girl, not even because of the fight, but because I suddenly realized I was sharing an apartment with someone who didn't like me anymore. Not really. Later that night, I checked Instagram. David had posted a story, a mirror selfie, shirt off, captioned, "Crazy girls be the hottest." My whole body went cold. I didn't sleep much that night. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me, counting the turns. He slept beside me like nothing was wrong, sprawled out, snoring lightly, dead to the world. Around 5 a.m., I got up. I sat on the couch and scrolled through my messages with my sister, Amanda. I hadn't told her much about the relationship lately. I think I was too embarrassed. She used to ask if David was still cool, and I'd always say, "Been hard." "Yeah, he's just stressed, works." But that wasn't really true. He wasn't stressed, he was changing. Or maybe he'd always been this way, and I was just finally seeing it. Around 7, the sun started to come in through the blinds. I stood up, went to our shared closet, and pulled out my duffel bag. I packed what I needed, my scrubs, toothbrush, my favorite hoodie, and the little framed photo of me and Amanda from high school graduation. David stirred a little but didn't wake up. I texted Amanda, "Can you come get me?" She responded in seconds, "Be there in 30, you okay?" "Not really, but I will be." I left the key on the kitchen counter. Amanda drove me back to her place in Clovis. She had a small apartment above a coffee shop with 2 cats and a balcony that faced a parking lot. It wasn't much, but it felt like peace. We didn't talk much on the ride. I think she could tell I was trying not to cry. When we got there, she made me tea. I sat at the little kitchen table while one of her cats curled around my ankle. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. I shrugged. I thought he was different. "They always seem different at first," she said gently. I told her about the messages, the girl, the gaslighting, the way he always turned things around so I felt like I was the one with the problem. She didn't interrupt. She just let me talk. It took 2 hours, but I said everything I needed to say. Afterward, she handed me a blanket and said, "You don't have to go back. Not ever." It's been 9 months since that night at the 7-Eleven. I live in my own place now, tiny, but mine. I still work at the pharmacy. I adopted a rescue dog named Junie, who follows me from room to room like a shadow. David texted once, just a "hope you're doing good." I didn't answer. Sometimes I still get flashes of that night, the girl's smug smile, the way I looked in that mirror, so small and unsure. But I don't feel small anymore. I learned that love isn't supposed to make you doubt yourself. It isn't supposed to make you feel crazy or insecure or like you're always begging to be heard. Real love is quiet and solid. You don't have to chase it. I don't know who David is texting these days, or what girls he's making feel like they're too much. But I'm not her anymore. You don't owe anyone your silence to keep the peace. Love that costs you your self-worth isn't love. It's control in disguise. Learn to walk away even when your voice shakes, especially then. You never really notice how loud a fridge hum is until you're sitting alone at a 7-Eleven past midnight, staring at a row of jerky packets and trying not to think about your life choices. That was me, last winter. My name's Naomi Archer. I'm a freelance editor, part-time cashier, and full-time trying to make it work type. After my ex Jacob and I split in the fall, I lost our apartment. It had this charming little rooftop view and rent that made me feel like I was being politely mugged every month. I couldn't afford it alone. So I moved into a basement studio off Sandy Boulevard and picked up an evening job at a 7-Eleven in Portland. It wasn't the worst place to work. Just your standard gas station convenience store, tucked between a weed dispensary and an old strip mall that hadn't been fully leased out since the Bush administration. The manager, Carla, was one of those no-nonsense women who could run the place with a baseball bat if she had to. Most shifts were quiet, just a few regulars, junk food scavengers, and folks grabbing vapes or lotto tickets on the way home. But on February 17th, things started to feel off. It was around 6:15 p.m. The sun was already down, that dusky blue bleed over the pavement. I noticed a man standing outside by the Redbox kiosk. He wasn't renting a movie, wasn't even pretending to. Just standing there, pacing a little, then kneeling like he was tying his shoe. Except he wasn't wearing laces. He kept his head down, but I saw him glance toward the window. Toward me. Through the reflection in the glass, our eyes locked for a second. I tried to shrug it off. Weirdos happen. I mean, it's a gas station, not a Nordstrom. Around 8:30, he came inside. I said, "Hey, evening." Nothing. He didn't answer. Just walked slow laps around the store, touched the ATM, picked up a Monster, stared at the label like it held state secrets, then set it back down. His fingers brushed across the counter before he left. Soft, almost thoughtful. I texted Thomas about it the next day when we switched shifts. He told me not to worry. "Probably just high or lonely," he said. "It's Portland. Half the city is either one or both." But the next night, he came back. Same jacket, same empty stare. This time, he bought gum, paid in crumpled ones. He stared at the card reader even though he didn't use it. When he left, I noticed the key hook behind the counter. There was a little row of labeled hooks. Bathroom, office, storage. The one marked storage room was empty. I couldn't say for sure if it had been missing earlier, but it hadn't registered until right then. I brought it up to Carla the next morning. She waved it off. Mop bucket. "Those keys fall behind the register all the time. You'll probably find it in the I didn't argue." But from then on, I started locking the bathroom door from the inside every time I used it. Something in my gut was waking up. That deep little voice we all have. The one that usually whispers but was now starting to shout. Something was wrong. I just couldn't prove it yet. Saturday night, February 19th. I was flying solo again. Carla liked to leave the late shifts to whoever she thought was tough enough not to care. That was me, apparently. I didn't mind it usually. The quiet gave me time to edit manuscripts or write my short fiction between customers. But that night, I wasn't getting any words out. I kept glancing at the security monitors, two grainy little feeds showing the front door and the back hallway. Nothing unusual, nothing helpful. It was about 10:20 p.m. I was behind the counter restocking the vape cartridges when the light flipped on in the storage room. It stopped me cold. That door should have been locked. I hadn't opened it. And the key, well, it still wasn't on the hook. I froze for a solid minute. Then I cleared my throat and called out, "Hey, back there's employees only." No answer. The store was dead silent except for the fridge hum and the occasional drip from the ceiling tiles. I leaned over and pressed the panic button. No click, no light. Nothing. I grabbed my phone. No bars. What the hell? Then slowly the storage room door creaked open. He stepped out. The man from the other night. But now he was different. The navy coat was gone, folded over his arm. He was wearing the old store hoodie, gray with a faded 7-Eleven patch, and a name tag. It said Matt. I don't know why, but that scared me more than anything else. Like he wasn't just someone in the store, but someone who belonged in it. Like the kind of ghost that pretends to be a memory. He didn't speak. He just watched me. Not angry, not smiling, just watching. I didn't scream. I moved. I ducked low, snatched the fire extinguisher off the wall and bolted out from behind the counter. As he stepped into the light, I hit him with a blind spray and used the cloud to run past him. I knocked over a rack of Doritos behind me, anything to slow him down, and sprinted to the back emergency exit. The alarm blared. The night air hit me like a punch, cold and wet and loud with rain. I ran straight to the weed dispensary next door. The bud tender saw my face and didn't ask questions. He locked the door and called the cops. When they got there, the store was empty. No man, no coat, nothing. The key was still missing. The back door? Unlocked from the inside. The police did what they could. Dusted some prints, checked the security tape. That's when things got stranger. The footage showed me, at the counter, restocking. But when they rewound to the moment the man should have stepped out. Glitch. A looping frame. The same 3 seconds of empty hallway. Over and over. The officer said the file was probably corrupted. I didn't believe that. I never went back. Carla tried to get me to finish the week. Was probably just a break-in. "We'll get the lock replaced," she said. "Police think it." But I told her no. I told her to shred my W-2 and send my last check in the mail. That Sunday, I packed up my apartment. Even though the store was only 5 blocks from where I lived, it felt like it was breathing down my neck. Every time I stepped outside, I scanned the sidewalk for a navy coat. I started sleeping with my phone on my chest and a kitchen knife tucked under my pillow. I told myself I was being dramatic. Until Wednesday morning, I got a text from Carla. "Found the missing key. Was in your old locker. Weird." I didn't respond. I didn't even open the message for hours. It just sat there on my lock screen while I stared at the ceiling. I never kept that key. That locker was always empty except for a protein bar and a mini bottle of Advil. The next night I got an email from an unknown address. Subject line, "Still here." No message, no attachments, just those 2 words. I deleted it without opening it. Then another came. 3 days later. Same subject, same nothing. I called the police again. Officer Reyes remembered me. "Could be spam," he said. "We can do. We can open a report, but unless there's a threat, there's not much. I think it's the man who was in the store." "Do you have his name?" "No." "Then we can't connect him to the emails, I'm sorry." I was tired of apologies. I left Portland by the end of March, moved down to Ashland. Smaller town, more artists, less shadows. I found a studio above a bakery, took a gig editing grant proposals for a nonprofit. I told no one I was leaving. The emails kept coming for a while. Once a week, then every other week. Same subject line. Always around midnight. Still here. There's something about those 2 words that can eat at you. They don't threaten, don't warn. They just linger. I stopped checking my inbox altogether. I changed my phone number, closed my old Gmail, even switched banks. For a while, it worked. Life started feeling normal again. I joined a writing group, made a few friends, started sleeping through the night. But sometimes, walking home late from a cafe or coming back from Trader Joe's, I still catch myself glancing over my shoulder, listening for footsteps, watching reflections in windows. Just in case. 6 months later, I saw him again. I was in Medford grabbing coffee before a client meeting. I was sitting by the window when a man crossed the street. Just a blur in a crowd. Navy coat. He didn't look at me. Didn't stop. But I saw it. The way he walked. The slight limp. The same shape. I didn't wait to see if he looked back. I stood, threw out my coffee, and left town. Again, I've learned to keep things packed. 2 duffels, a laptop, my passport. No address stays mine for too long. That's just life now. It's not about being scared. It's about listening when your gut whispers and acting before it has to scream. Sometimes the most dangerous people aren't the ones who jump out screaming, but the ones who watch, who study, who wait. When your instincts tell you something's wrong, believe them. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't let others do it either. Your life might depend on it. The 4th of July used to be my favorite holiday when I was a kid. It meant backyard fireworks, burgers on the grill, and catching fireflies with my cousins until we couldn't keep our eyes open. That version of me feels like a ghost now. Last year on the 4th, I woke up in a hospital with blood on my knuckles and no memory of how I got there. My ex-wife, Lauren, had filed the final restraining order the next morning. That was the last day I saw my daughter, Abby. Since then, I've been clawing my way back from the edge. Rehab, court dates, a halfway house. I've been sober 312 days now, and the only thing keeping me on track is routine. I rent a studio behind a smoke shop in Mesa, Arizona. I work the overnight shift at a 7-Eleven off Southern Ave. I clean. I stock shelves. I make coffee for the bleary-eyed few who shuffle in at 2 a.m. to buy cigarettes and scratchers. Most nights it's quiet. I like quiet. That's why I noticed right away when something felt off. It started July 5th. I was already on edge from the fireworks. Loud bangs set off something in me. Not a memory exactly, just a surge of adrenaline I couldn't explain. The kind that makes your chest tight for no reason. Around 9:45 p.m., a man walked in. Tall guy, work boots covered in red dust, oil-stained mechanic uniform. His name patch read, Caleb. He had the kind of smile that was just a little too wide, like he'd practiced it. "Busy night?" he asked. "Not really," I replied, scanning a box of Gatorades behind the counter. "You here all night alone?" I hesitated. "Pretty much." "You guys keep a gun back there or anything?" That one made me pause. I forced a smile. "Just me and the panic button." He nodded slowly, bought a fountain drink, paid in cash, walked out without another word. I watched him get in his truck, old Ford, rusted bumper, fuzzy dice swinging from the mirror. I've dealt with weird customers before, meth heads, drunks, lonely guys with too much time and not enough therapy. But something about Caleb stayed in my chest, like smoke that wouldn't clear. Half an hour later, I heard the coffee pot bubbling. I hadn't touched it. When I walked over, a pack of gum was gone from the counter. No bell, no door chime. I checked the back door. Still locked. I was sure I'd locked it, I always do. But I checked it again anyway, then circled the store like I was looking for a mouse in a maze. There was nothing. Just me. And the gnawing feeling that I wasn't really alone. Around 11:20 p.m., I went to mop up a spill near the slushy machine and saw it. A dirty boot print on the supply closet door. Smudged. Oil-soaked. Same pattern as the boots Caleb had been wearing. I didn't even hear the door open. I turned on every light in the store, walked every aisle twice, checked the cooler. Nothing. The place was still. I texted my manager, Rita. "Someone's messing around, just a heads up." She didn't reply, not unusual. Rita kept her phone off half the time and smoked cloves behind the dumpster during breaks like the store was a burden she tolerated. I tried to settle back into my routine, but I couldn't stop checking over my shoulder. The clock crawled. The AC buzzed. Every little beep from the microwave felt like a scream. Then at 1:35 a.m., the bell rang. A girl walked in, maybe 17, blue hoodie, torn leggings, eyes like she hadn't slept in days. I straightened up. "You okay?" She didn't answer. Just walked up to the counter and whispered, "Is there somewhere to hide?" I was about to ask more when Caleb's truck pulled into the lot. The girl saw it and bolted behind the counter, crouching below the register. "Don't let him see me," she whispered, shaking. Caleb walked in slow, empty-handed, smile gone. "You see a girl come in? Hoodie, maybe nervous. Said she needed a ride." I shook my head. "Nah, no one since one." He stared at me for a long time. "She lies. Don't let her fool you." Then he walked out. The bell above the door felt like a warning shot. I reached for the phone. I called 911, told them a young girl came in, seemed terrified, said she was being followed. They promised to send someone. 20 minutes passed. No one came. The girl sat behind the counter, knees to her chest. I offered her a bottle of water, which she took without speaking. She looked so small crouched there, like a kid hiding during a school lockdown. "My name's Daniel," I said. "Casey," she whispered. I asked if she wanted to call someone. She shook her head. "He's not my dad," she said finally. "He tells people that, but he's not. He's been showing up places, stores, my school. My mom thought he was just some handyman." She paused, looked around like she didn't trust the walls. One night I woke up. He was standing over me. Said I owed him something. I sat back. My stomach felt like it was folding in on itself. She pulled a backpack from under the counter, unzipped it. Inside were 4 7-Eleven name tags, all scratched and worn. She handed me one. It read, Danny. My throat closed. I hadn't gone by that name since my first job in Tulsa, years ago. Different life. Where did you get this? She didn't answer. Just looked at me, dead serious. He keeps them, says they're trophies. If your name's on one, he's coming back. I didn't know what to say. My palms started to sweat. The cameras blinked. For a moment all the feeds went black. When they came back, the lot was empty. No truck, no Caleb, nothing. Rita came in at 4 a.m. like nothing happened. I told her everything. The guy, the girl, the name tag, the missing footage. She gave me that look people give when they're deciding whether to call HR or just chalk it up to a bad night. Probably a runaway, she said. Cops will find her. If not, she'll come back for snacks. I told her about the name tag. She rolled her eyes. You sure it's not yours? I quit on the spot, packed my locker, tossed my apron, walked out without a goodbye. I tried following up on Casey, called the precinct, asked if a report had been filed. They had nothing. No Casey, no incident report, no call log from me, even though I had the time-stamped call on my phone. Just a void, like none of it happened. I started sleeping with the lights on again. I moved to Flagstaff a week later, took a job delivering meals for a food bank. It pays like crap, but it's honest. I don't wear name tags anymore. Don't use the name Danny. That person's gone. But some nights around 2 or 3 a.m., I swear I hear a door chime. Sometimes in my dreams. Sometimes when I'm wide awake, unloading boxes in a quiet alley or gassing up my truck in the middle of nowhere. Once, in a motel lobby 3 states away, I saw a man in dusty boots flipping through the lost and found. He picked up a name tag, smiled, and walked out. I didn't follow. I just left. Drove all night. Didn't stop until the sun came up. People don't believe you until it's too late. Sometimes, not even then. Trust your instincts. When something feels off, it usually is. It doesn't matter how calm someone seems or how polite they are. Monsters don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes they walk in wearing a name patch and ask for a fountain drink. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving Seattle. No texts, no calls, no tearful airport goodbye. I just got in my rusted '04 Nissan with the bad alignment and a back seat full of thrift store luggage, and I drove until my lungs stopped feeling tight. I made it to Raleigh on a Tuesday night with a dead phone and $73 to my name. By Thursday, I had a room rented over a pawn shop on Lakewood Drive and a job at a 7-Eleven a block down. The owner didn't ask for much, just that I show up, don't steal, and don't fall asleep behind the register. I told him I didn't sleep much anyway. That wasn't a lie. The night shift became a kind of refuge. Quiet, predictable. The store hummed with broken fluorescents and the floor tiles smelled like cheap bleach and frozen burritos. It was nothing, and I needed nothing. I liked that nobody knew me here. I liked that people didn't ask questions. Most of all, I liked that for 8 hours a night I had a counter between me and the world. Most customers were harmless. Drunk college kids, delivery drivers with Bluetooth headsets glued to their ears, and the occasional lonely soul who wanted to talk about conspiracy theories over a cup of burnt coffee. Then he started showing up. I noticed him the first time because he didn't do anything strange. No eye contact, no awkward questions, just grabbed a bottle of iced tea and a pack of sunflower seeds, paid in cash, and left. He wore a gray hoodie, jeans, and a faded red baseball cap. Normal, forgettable. But then he came the next night. Same time, same items, same silence. On the third night, he finally looked up. "You always work this late?" he asked. I shrugged. "Pays extra?" He smiled, just a little. "You must not sleep much." I didn't respond. Just rang him up and muttered, "Have a good one." "You too, Mara," he said as he walked out. That stopped me cold. My name wasn't on my tag. Hasn't been since I started. It just says cashier in plain print. I remember because I peeled the sticker off myself after my second shift. I didn't say anything. Maybe he overheard someone. Maybe he saw my resume or W-2. I tried to tell myself there was an explanation. People notice more than you think. But even as I told myself that, a small, electric fear crawled up my spine. He came back again the next night, and the next. Every single night at exactly 2:17 a.m. I started noticing the patterns. Always the same entrance. Slow, like he was waiting for something. Always the same items. Iced tea, sunflower seeds. Except some nights he wouldn't buy anything. He'd just wander the aisles. One lap, then out. I tried to be polite. I tried not to let my voice shake. I learned that if I didn't ask questions, he didn't offer answers. One night, around the 8th visit, I broke my own rule. "You live around here?" He glanced up, that same half smile. Not anymore. That night after he left, I rewound the camera feed from the back corner. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe proof he was just weird and not dangerous, but I found something else. He vanished, literally. Between camera angles, he just disappeared for about 8 minutes. Then he came back into view, walking from the back stockroom, which should have been locked. I ran back and checked. Lock was still latched. No sign of a break-in, no forced entry. But something was missing. My spare keys. They were gone. I'd kept them clipped under the register drawer, tucked behind the shift manual. No one knew they were there. I told my shift manager the next morning. She barely looked up from her clipboard. Borrowed them and didn't log it. Happens. Probably just misplaced them. Or maybe maintenance. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I just nodded and walked away. The next few nights I started locking the bathroom from the inside, even while cleaning it. I changed my walking route home. Took different streets, different buses. Still, like clockwork, he came back. Always at 2:17 a.m. Until one night. He didn't. That should have been a relief. But the silence felt wrong. Empty. Too empty. At 3:12 a.m., just before I was about to restock the cooler, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. "Don't look so happy. I'm already inside." I dropped the phone. Not metaphorically. I literally dropped it. It skidded across the tile and hit the fridge door. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. That message. 10 words. 10 ice-cold words that landed like a whisper against my spine. I forced myself to breathe. Looked up. Nothing out of place. The store was empty. But it didn't feel empty. I locked the stockroom first. Deadbolt turned, handle jammed. Then I checked the back door, still secure. Nothing broken, no alarm triggered. Everything looked the same. But it didn't feel the same. Something was off. I stood behind the register, trying not to panic. I picked up my phone, hand shaking, and hit 911. No signal. Not low signal. Not 1 bar. No service. The little red X blinked in the corner like it was laughing at me. I tried turning the phone off and back on. Nothing. I looked at the security screen next, hoping maybe the cameras could show me what I couldn't see. I flipped through the feeds. Aisle 1, empty. Aisle 2, empty. Back cooler, nothing. Bathroom hall, dark. Then I saw it. Feed 4, top shelf of the cleaning supply aisle. Tucked behind a row of detergent boxes was a red baseball cap. I hadn't seen it there earlier. I would have noticed. I cleaned that shelf just after midnight, but there it was, sitting like it had always belonged there. I grabbed the fire axe from the emergency box mounted by the cooler. I'd never touched it before. I remember wondering if it was even real. Some stores keep the box for show, the way restaurants frame fake fire plans. But it was real. Heavy. Cold. I stood there, axe in both hands, heart going 90 beats a minute, and I waited. No sound, no footsteps. Just the buzz of the soda machine and the click of the cooler fan. I didn't wait long. The vent above aisle 3 made a soft clink, just once, like metal shifting against metal, like something being unscrewed. I didn't think. I ran, straight for the emergency exit. Alarm blared the second I shoved the door open. I didn't care. I flew across the lot barefoot, left my shoes behind the counter, pounded on the glass of the subway next door until one of the guys cleaning the slicers let me in. He looked at me like I was crazy. I felt crazy. The police showed up 20 minutes later. They searched the 7-Eleven top to bottom. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a fingerprint, nothing out of place. But when they checked the security feed, those same cameras I'd watched just minutes before, they told me the footage was corrupted. Said the feed froze from 2:11 to 3:34 a.m., an entire blackout. Clean. They said maybe it was a system bug, maybe a storm interference. There hadn't been a storm. I told them about the hat. They didn't find it. I told them about the message. By the time I showed them my phone, the message was gone. No record. No log of an unknown number. Just an empty inbox and a full dose of humiliation. They left. Told me to lock the doors early if I felt unsafe. I didn't go back to that store. Not even to collect my last check. I moved 2 weeks later. Didn't give notice. Just packed my suitcase, changed my number, and took a bus 2 towns over. Found a room above a dry cleaner and took a job restocking shelves at a 24-hour pharmacy. Day shifts only. I thought that was the end of it. But then the flowers started. At first, it didn't seem related. A bouquet of lilies left outside my door in a plain black vase. No note. No card. I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe for the tenant before me. I left them out on the curb. Then it happened again. Different flowers. Roses this time. Delivered in the middle of the night. Always placed directly in front of my door. No footsteps in the hall, no camera footage. Just there. I found out later that 3 other women working night shifts at nearby 7-Elevens got the same deliveries. One of them had her apartment broken into. Nothing stolen, just her spare keys missing. Another was found unconscious in her hallway. No signs of struggle, but her phone was flushed down the toilet. None of us got answers. The police reports went nowhere. Surveillance cameras were always either disabled, corrupted, or under maintenance at the time of the incidents. We weren't believed. One manager told a reporter we were just spreading rumors. But we knew. Whatever he was still watching. I started using a burner phone, one that I keep off unless I need it. I changed my name on every online account, moved again, didn't leave a forwarding address, and still, some nights, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the doorbell rings once, just once. When I check the peephole, nothing. No one on the stairs, no shadows in the hall, but always, a bottle of iced tea sitting on the doormat, same brand, same condensation beating down the side, unopened, waiting. I don't touch it. I don't sleep after those nights either. You want to know what haunts me most? It's not the message, not the flowers, not even the red cap behind the detergent boxes. It's the way he said my name that first time, so casually, like he'd always known it, like he was just waiting for me to remember his face. I don't leave the iced tea there anymore. The first few times I just stared at it through the peephole until sunrise. Then I started kicking it down the stairs, hard, sending it bouncing off the walls into the street. I once left it sitting on the steps to see if anyone came back for it. They never did. It's always fresh, always cold, like someone places it just minutes before I wake up, or just before the bell rings. I don't have a doorbell, that's the worst part. My building doesn't have one. It's an old place converted from a row house into split rentals. The buzzer panel's broken and the mail slots jammed shut. But at 2:17 a.m., the chime always comes. Clear, metallic, unmistakable. Like an old school bell or the one above the 7-Eleven door. That sound is inside me now. etched into my nerves. I hear it sometimes in my dreams. Not loud, not even alarming. Just there, like a presence watching from the end of a long hallway. I keep moving. I don't stay anywhere more than 6 months now. I work cash jobs when I can get them. Nothing with name tags. Nothing overnight. I live quiet. I stay offline. But this thing, whatever it is, doesn't forget. Last month I was working at a thrift store 2 towns west of Raleigh. Day shifts only, sorting old clothes, cleaning donated toys. I liked it. No cameras, no late hours, no creeps. Just old ladies arguing about VHS tapes and volunteers sorting through bags of junk. Then a donation came in, a big cardboard box. No return label, no donor info. Inside were clothes, mostly old uniforms, a Domino's shirt, a hospital scrub top, a Walmart vest, and a gray 7-Eleven hoodie, folded neatly on top. No tag, just a patch where one used to be. The stitching outline still visible, the threads still shaped like my name. Mara. I quit that same afternoon, packed a duffel bag, left town by nightfall. I didn't even stop to lock the door behind me. Now I rent a room from a retired couple who run a nursery out in a small North Carolina town no one's ever heard of. Cash only, no lease, no questions. They think I'm from Oregon, I didn't correct them. Every night I sleep with a hammer under my pillow. A real one, steel head, claw end sharp. I keep the window shut even in summer, no matter how hot it gets. Sometimes I wonder if I'm paranoid, if I broke something in myself during that year I spent running. I don't trust shadows anymore. I don't trust quiet. I flinch at things other people don't even hear. But then last week I found a flower on the windowsill. A lily. Not in a vase, just the bloom. Fresh, placed on the outside of the glass. I never told anyone where I moved. Never gave the new address to a soul. And when I went to bed that night at 2:17 a.m., the wind chime outside the nursery shop clinked once. Just once. Not a breeze in sight. You can run from the past. You can change your name, your job, your hair, your city. But what's watching you, what truly knows you, doesn't need a map to find its way back. Evil doesn't always come in the form of monsters or killers. Sometimes it's quieter. It watches. It waits. It learns your patterns. It doesn't chase you down screaming. It lets you settle. Then knocks once at 2:17 a.m. We live in a world that tells women not to overreact, not to jump to conclusions, not to make noise when something doesn't feel right. But the moment you doubt your own fear, that's the moment something slips through the cracks. So trust your gut, change your locks, take the long way home. And when the bell above the door rings in a place it shouldn't, don't wait to see who walks in, because sometimes they were already inside. I never imagined I'd work at a gas station again, especially not one with fluorescent lights and endless rows of Slurpee machines. But after everything in 2020, discovering my ex was siphoning money from my bank accounts, finding hidden cameras in the bathroom vents of our apartment, I swore I'd never go back. Then custody court costs hit, lawyer fees stacked up, and suddenly I needed a job, fast. The night shift at a 7-Eleven on Parker Road in Aurora, Colorado, offered something I could afford and work while I handled hearings. I told myself it was temporary. My ex's name was Riley Quinn. That's still me. The store was tucked between a sketchy smoke shop and a half-abandoned strip of single-story storefronts. Fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead. The concrete floor smelled faintly of bleach, oil, and stale coffee. Most nights I worked with Marcus, a quiet 19-year-old who played chess on his phone behind the counter, only speaking in monosyllables unless someone asked a question. I kept my head down, clocked in and out, and counted the hours. I stayed quiet because I had too much to lose. Custody, sanity, my daughter's trust. It was a Monday evening. I remember because the snow had just started falling, fluffy flakes drifting down outside like quiet warnings. I clocked in at 5:55 p.m., greeted Marcus with a nod, and got to work stocking the rolls and sweeping coffee grounds off the floor. Around 6:30, a man walked in, maybe mid-30s, crisp business casual shirt, jeans, clean shoes. He bought a pack of gum with cash, then looked up when I printed the receipt and waited until he saw my name printed on it. He folded it and tucked it into his jacket like it was a trophy. My name, Riley Quinn. I felt goosebumps on my arms, but I shrugged it off. I saw weird customers all the time, people who want receipts for tax records, accountability, or who just like the smell of printed paper. He came again, the next night, same time, same small purchase, paid in cash. This time it was a bottle of water, and he insisted on a receipt again. He glared when I wrote my name. It felt purposeful. I told Marcus what happened later on the night shift. He said, "Some people are just weird, I guess." People aren't weird. They're dangerous. But I stayed calm because I didn't have the luxury of fear. Not yet. On the 5th night, I started noticing odd things. The man didn't park in front. He walked in from the alley behind the store. Even though snow covered the ground, his shoes looked perfectly dry. I told Marcus again. He's coming in from the back, cameras glitching. The alley cam had static when he arrived. Exactly 20 seconds every time. Enough for him to enter without showing how he got there. Enough to unsettle me. When I told the franchise manager Dennis, he said he'd look into it and that maybe it was maintenance. I felt small. Nobody saw the flags waving in my bones. After that 5th night, I started watching the clock. The man came between 6:10 and 6:15 p.m., always paying cash, always asking for a receipt. There was a pattern. It became part of my nightly routine, waiting for that register beep and the printer clicking. When he walked out, he never looked back. No smile, no wave. Just my name circled on a folded strip of paper tucked into his jacket. I began noticing things in the store I hadn't before. The break room locker door that Marcus used sometimes. The backroom shelves. The dispensing area behind the counter. I checked the security system at the start of every shift. Everything looked normal. Then I'd remember the glitch. I'd rewind the alley cam and watch the static unfold, eyes narrowing until the timestamp shifted back to normal. No car, no tire tracks, no melting snow leading to the door. On the 6th night, I parked further down the lot to avoid being seen. I told Marcus I'd be out in 2 minutes and slipped into my car. Then I saw a small folded piece of thermal paper stuck beneath my windshield wiper. I ripped it out and my breath stalled. It was a receipt. My register. My name circled in red ink. No other message. No number. Just a silent, folded statement. My name. Enough to send my heart racing. I drove right to a friend's house and didn't go back. I told the police the next morning what happened. They asked if I thought I was being stalked. I said yes. But they needed a threat. A license plate. A criminal history. I had none of that. Just receipts. Just weird. They filed a report, but I didn't feel safer. I stayed with my friend for 2 nights. When I returned, the store felt like a trap. I walked in. My aprons were folded in the locker. My shifts were logged. Everything looked normal. But I didn't stay. 3 nights later, I returned to work. Walking into the store felt like stepping through glass. The lights flickered overhead and the coffee grinder droned behind me. I saw Marcus behind the counter, looking shell-shocked but not saying anything. His phone sat untouched on the countertop as if he'd been frozen mid-text. I texted him, "Marcus, everything okay?" The message never delivered. Phone rang. Went to voicemail. I knocked on the break room locker door. It swung open. Instead of his apron or lunchbox, it was stuffed with hundreds of receipts, each printed with my name. Different timestamps, some from shifts I wasn't working, some at times the register wasn't even active. And at the bottom, scribbled in shaky all caps, one name, one shift, one witness. Every paper felt like a beating heartbeat in my palm. The receipts smelled like fresh thermal ink and dread. I backed away, dropped them into my locker, and called 911 again. This time I demanded it was stalking. An officer came out. They took photos, bagged the receipts as evidence, interviewed me into dawn. But Marcus, he was gone. His phone pinged last near an abandoned laundromat a mile from the store. His sneakers found, size 10, muddy, by a drainage pipe. He'd vanished. I stayed at the station as long as I could before calling my friend to pick me up. I signed out for the night, left behind my apron and my locker key. I quit that same evening, grabbed coffee on my way out of Aurora, but didn't stop. Headed north to Utah, to somewhere I could breathe again. I told no one where I went. I changed my phone number, haven't checked social media in months. Starting over in Utah meant doing things on my terms. I rented a small room above a laundromat next to a diner, cash only, no lease. I took a part-time job shelving books at a community library. Quiet, safe, no name tags, no receipts, no strangers paying cash and staring at the ink. I told myself I was out, that I was free, until the first delivery arrived. A plain white envelope slid under my apartment door. Inside, a 7-Eleven receipt. My name printed. Date, a day I was outside town. Time, 8:43 p.m. Nothing else. No code, no note. My pulse thundered. I told myself maybe it was a mail mix-up. Then 3 more came. Each left silently at night. When I picked them up, the thermal paper crackled in my hand. Same store, same printed name. I researched online. Found 3 other former 7-Eleven night shift women working in nearby states. All reported deliveries of anonymous flower bouquets or receipts. One had her apartment broken into with nothing taken but her spare keys missing. Another was found unconscious in her parking lot. No phone, no wallet, no memory. All camera systems were mysteriously disabled that night. No resolution. I tried going to police here. They filed new reports, matched details to Aurora, but without physical threat or identity, they said they were limited. I stayed on edge. I started sleeping with my phone in my hand even when it was off. I kept the library job but only worked early mornings. I stopped socializing. I changed my routines completely. Now months later, I still leave carefully. I rent through a friend of a friend. I pay cash. I don't register anything in my name. I still receive receipts. Not every night, not same store, different times, different brands, but always a store receipt, always my name printed, always blank beyond that. Each one is a reminder. You served me well. I carry a small notebook where I log them. I keep them in envelopes labeled by date. I scan them with my phone, archive them in cloud drives. I'm the one who has to keep creating evidence if anything happens. I keep pacing through town, watching my back, letting the wind whisper without trusting its breeze. I don't say his name. I don't know it. Maybe the man in business casual bought gum as a ritual. Maybe Marcus encountered him again. Maybe the receipts weren't meant for me, but someone else took over. I don't know. I can't prove it. The receipt printer at that store still works. I know, because I pulled inventory with Dennis's assistant once. He had me check the printer paper. I saw the exact model, but no one can confirm what prints after hours. I sometimes go days without fear, and then I get a receipt slipped under the door at 2:43 a.m., and my breath stops. And I realize he's still collecting. I don't want to keep moving forever. I don't want to stop trusting people or parks or late-night streets, but I will, until the receipts stop. Fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it's printed on thermal paper, circled in red ink, slipped silently at night, not demanding anything but your attention. If you sense someone paying too close attention to details, ordinary people don't call out, take it seriously. Trust the holes in what you see, the glitches in camera feeds, the missing keys, the small rituals. Document everything. Save the proof. Even if it seems minor today, it may mean survival tomorrow. And never let anyone tell you you're overreacting. Sometimes the things that seem like small ghosts turn out to be very real threats in disguise. Your intuition is not paranoia, it's your first line of defense. There are things about yourself you learn only after you break. For me, it happened in the middle of a Ross dress for less, standing between 2 racks of clearance coats. I was holding a blue sweater I didn't need. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Holiday music was playing overhead. Then the walls narrowed, the air folded in, and I was on the floor, knees to my chest, hands over my ears, sobbing into a hoodie that still had the tag on. No one stopped. Not really. A woman glanced at me, then turned around like I was part of the clutter. I remember one kid whispered, "Is she okay?" And his mom pulled him away like I was contagious. They called someone, I guess. An ambulance came. The ER said panic attack. My doctor said social anxiety. My therapist said I needed a pattern, something familiar. You can't heal from the world by avoiding it. Start small, safe, repetitive. That's how I found 7-Eleven. It was just 4 blocks from my apartment in Sacramento. Clean enough, bright enough, predictable. The hum of the refrigerators soothed me more than anything else. Every evening around 7:15 I'd walk there, buy aloe water, sometimes a protein bar, sometimes nothing. I'd linger in aisle 3 and look at the same gum packs, letting the buzz of electricity remind me that I was still here, still functioning. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peace. I didn't need to talk to anyone, and that made it perfect. Until one night I heard, "You always buy that same drink." I turned. There was a man behind the counter, short beard, soft eyes, late 30s. His name tag said Greg. He had a smile that looked practiced, like he used it to calm people down. "It's calming," I said before I could overthink it. "Routine helps." He nodded like he understood. "I get that." It was the first conversation I'd had with a stranger in weeks. Greg was just there one night, like he'd always been part of the building. The next night he waved at me when I walked in. The night after that, he slid me a free muffin and said, "You look like you could use a little sugar." I laughed. It felt strange to laugh with someone whose last name I didn't know. But something about him was gentle, like he'd been through something too. Over time, he became part of my routine. He didn't pry, not at first. Mostly he made small talk while I paid. Once he asked if I liked journaling. I said I used to. The next night he handed me a tiny leather notebook. "For thoughts that feel too heavy," he said. I thanked him. I didn't open it, not right away, but I kept it in my backpack like a lucky charm. A few nights later, his questions started shifting. "You live around here, right?" he asked, casual. "Just a few blocks," I said without thinking. "You ever come in earlier in the day?" "No, just evenings," I answered. "You always come alone?" That one landed a little harder. I smiled to hide the static in my chest. "Yeah, just me." He nodded and changed the subject, but I walked home with my hands clenched in my pockets that night. My steps felt too loud, the lights too dim. I double-locked the door when I got back to my apartment. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Greg was just a nice guy with no filter. I didn't know then how wrong I was. The next evening I went to the store like always, but Greg wasn't there. Behind the counter was a kid in a black beanie, name tag that said Raul. Probably 20. He looked new. I felt a weird kind of disappointment. I didn't realize until then how much I had built Greg into my ritual. I bought my aloe water and stood awkwardly at the counter. I finally asked, "Hey, where's Greg?" Raul blinked. "Who?" "Greg," I said. "The guy who usually works at night. Beard, polite, kinda quiet." Raul stared at me for a second too long. "Greg doesn't work here." I almost laughed. "What do you mean?" "He was here like every night this week." He shook his head. "He used to. He got fired a few months ago, like way back. He wouldn't leave. Just kept showing up, standing behind the counter. Took his name tag when they let him go. Management had to change the lock code." My mouth went dry, but he served me, took my card, talked to me. Raul frowned. He shouldn't have had register access. No one's seen him since December. I left without saying anything else. My knees felt weak as I walked home. I went straight to the backpack where I kept the notebook. I opened it for the first time. Inside, page after page, 28 in total, were handwritten notes. Lena, 7:14 p.m., blue hoodie. Looked sad. Lena, 7:17 p.m., smiled, asked about almond milk. Lena, 7:19 p.m., said she lives close. Alone? There were dates, times, mood annotations, and at the very back, folded between 2 pages, was a photo. A photo of me, taken from behind loading a dryer in my apartment building's laundry room. I dropped the notebook. My hands were shaking. I locked every window. I didn't sleep that night. I went to the police the next morning. I handed over the notebook, showed them the picture, told them about Greg, if that was even his real name. They filed a report, took photos, said they'd look into it. That was it. He didn't threaten you, the officer said, almost apologetic. Prosecute unless it escalates. This kind of thing's hard to. I felt my insides cave. How much worse does it need to get? They said they'd patrol the area. No promises. I didn't go to 7-Eleven that night, or the night after. But on the third night I gave in. I needed something familiar. I needed to feel like the world hadn't shifted entirely off its axis. I walked in, hood up, heart racing. The store looked the same, maybe too much the same. My aloe water was already on the counter. I froze. No one was behind the register. No one else was in the store. I turned in a slow circle, dread rising like floodwater in my chest. Then I looked at the scratch ticket machine. Its screen, normally showing jackpots, was dark, except for one line typed in bold white letters. Routine helps. See you soon. I don't go out after dark now, not alone, not even for water. I moved apartments 3 weeks later. I didn't tell the landlord why, just said I needed to be closer to the train line. That was a lie. I needed to feel like I could disappear if I had to. I haven't heard from Greg, or whatever his real name is, but sometimes I find little signs that he might still be nearby. A receipt for aloe water folded and placed under my doormat. The same notebook, blank, left in my mailbox, even though it's locked. A message scribbled in chalk near the alley behind my new building. Some routines are hard to break. I still see a therapist. I'm on meds now. I journal, but never in anything someone else gave me. The scariest thing isn't the stalking or the messages or even the photo. It's how easy it was for me to mistake attention for kindness. Because when you're lonely, when you're scared, when you've forgotten how to breathe in public, someone simply noticing you can feel like safety. But not all attention is love. Not all kindness is harmless. Some people don't want to know you. They want to keep you. Predators don't always come with fangs or fists. Sometimes they wear name tags and hand you notebooks and ask how your day's going. Trust isn't built in routine. It's built in boundaries. Pay attention to the questions people ask and why they ask them. And when something feels off, it is. You don't need to wait for proof to protect yourself. Because no matter how familiar the aisle, if you're being watched, it's not a routine, it's a setup.